Alright, I guess the takes in my Souls hot takes video weren't hot enough, cause it's time to ruffle some more feathers and rustle some more jimmies with my top 10 underrated bosses of Soulsborne. Keep in mind that this is just my list, not the right list, so let me know your most underrated bosses down below. Subscribe for more content, and let's get started with number 10. So as we get into this list, let's just talk about what I mean by underrated. I mean that the difference of how much I love the boss and how much the community seems to love the boss is large. This means it could be a boss everyone hates and I think is pretty okay, or it could be a boss that everyone thinks is meh and I think is flawless, or it could even be a boss that everyone hates and I think is perfection time. So down here at number 10 on the list, there aren't going to be bosses that I have massive hot takes on, but there might be some that I think are generally overlooked. Number 10. So there are a lot of bosses from Dark Souls 2 specifically that could have snagged this elusive 10th place spot. There's Executioner's Chariot that has a creative puzzle fight concluding with a mediocre mano-a-mano against an undead horse. But the run back is just so horrendous that I couldn't muster up the courage to place him on a list that's anything positive. Flexile Sentry isn't a bad option, as the ship filling with water over time makes for a battle against time, and the two distinct sides of the boss mean there are two different ways of approaching the fight. In the end though, I went with Freja, because, well, I can. But really, I went with Freja because I think they do a great job building the atmosphere before the fight. Descending on the spiderwebs was a nice touch, and the eventual cutscene is one of the best of Dark Souls 2. Freja herself provides two different weak points. She has a face and a butt, or a face and another face, or is it two butts? Either way, you can essentially bait out an attack from her face and then go whack her butt face, or you can just fight her normally. I love the diversity of options here. The arena being littered with spider mobs would normally annoy me, but they're not too bad to deal with, and can be warded off with fire. I would even consider placing this higher if there weren't some wonky hitbox issues sometimes with her laser attack and when you try to hit Freja. She's this massive armored spider, so apparently you can only really damage her when you hit her right in the face. That's cool because it makes people face their anachrophobia head on, but sometimes my blade just clips through her and does nothing. Like I said, she's not great or anything, but she's pretty solid for being so consistently overlooked. Number 9, Demon Prince. Obviously, Demon Prince is a liked boss. People seem to have mostly positive things to say, but this is one of those cases where a lot of people think Demon Prince is a good boss, and I think Demon Prince is a perfect boss. I put Demon Prince as my 8th favorite in the entire series, above ONS, Midir, Artorias, and more in my video ranking the top 10 in Soulsborne. And while I have seen a few lists here and there give him his well-deserved credit, people overlook the fight because of its placement. It's placed at the beginning of a phenomenal DLC loaded to the brim with fantastic content. He is constantly overshadowed by Midir and Gale, understandably so, but it's time to give him his credit. Poor guy just wants to spread his wings and fly. Jesus, they're big. I've covered how brutally fantastic this boss is in the past. It's one of the best gang fights of the series in the first phase, and the order of your demon killing determines the prince's final form. Both are challenging and visually stunning while being fair and fun. In all honesty, this might be the fight I have the most pure fun with in the entire series, and not enough people in the community seem to give him any due credit. I think as the years go by, people will learn to love him, not just like him. He's not just the guy at the party that you thought was cool but would never talk to outside of that setting. He's got a lot to give, I promise. Number 8, Fire Giant. With some of these bosses, I get it. I get that with the Fire Giant, you don't very often get to take in the spectacle because you're busy chipping at his ankles. I get that he has some absurd amounts of damage and can one-shot you if you're caught off guard, but god dang if he doesn't make up for it in just about every other way. First off, even his introduction is fun, as we meet him in this snowy clash atop a massive mountain. He lumbers towards you from the distance. The grotesque nature of the compound fracture is captivating. And the following face-on-stomach reveal left me simultaneously sick and awestruck. I love how he's basically two bosses in one, as without his full leg, he becomes more of a mage and uses much more spells. If I had one real complaint, I don't really love the fact that his rolling, which can be kind of unpredictable, will basically one-shot you. But I did this on a rune level 1 run where every hit legitimately can one-shot me, and I didn't have too rough of a time. It only took about 10 tries, so if I can manage it with that stipulation, it can't be that bad. I think they did a good job of designing the animations to be visible even from the ankle position. For example, when he does his massive plate smash, you just have to dodge when his foot comes down. as he will soon follow it up with the big slammer. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means, as the health bar and damage output are a bit too much, but the spectacle provides more than enough to make up for the shortcomings in my book. Number 7, Iudex Gundyr. Guys, seriously, you're sleeping on this one. I think Iudex might just be the best intro boss of the entire series. I could see Margit taking the throne. Both are also repeated later on in the game with harder versions, but unlike Margit and Morgott, I prefer the earlier version in Dark Souls 3. He does just about everything. He provides a wonderful introduction to the combat of Dark Souls 3. Newcomers can take dozens of tries, while veterans shouldn't struggle too much. The arena, music, lore, and atmosphere are all there. The main reason people seem to sleep on Udi, that's what I call him now, is that his phase transformation takes the mechanics of the fight down a notch. It becomes challenging to see what's going on, and the character of the boss is ruined. I could not disagree more. It was nice after all these years that the developers were able to pull off a shocking phase transition that really caught new and old players off guard. It's a perfect hook into this world, showcasing the depth the team went to make every boss fight special. And it's perhaps the perfect way to turn Dark Souls 3 into a communal experience. Every time I had someone over, I'd have them play Dark Souls 3 up to Iudex. It's just so fun to watch new players lose their cool as Iudex morphs into a 3-story terror blob. And for that, we should thank him. Number 6, Oceiros, the Consumed King. Most of you probably know why Oceiros is great, and why he is not so great. He is great for his atmosphere and lore, and he is not so great for some of the underdeveloped mechanics. I suppose this is simply a matter of weight placed on different values, because I can't really argue that Oceiros is a flawless mechanical battle. His movement can feel lurchy and uneven, even though that fits his character. And the spectacle of other Dark Souls 3 fights is removed in place of odd, thrashing bursts of strangeness. But it's still an above average boss fight. It just isn't quite as pristine as the rest of Dark Souls 3, which is probably why it falls so far for so many people. But for everything the fight falls short on with mechanics, it excels violently in character. While I wouldn't have necessarily been opposed to another knight with a sword battle, I'm much more ecstatic about the story that plays out in front of us. The main highlight here is the voice acting, as it is the primary vessel for the story before us. This might be my favorite voice acting of the entire series, and that's saying something considering the competition. I'm not going to go into the details of the baby in this fight, but let's just say it's disturbing. And I really enjoy the setting and cutscene. So while this is not a boss that I'd defend to my dying day, I'd say a lot of people don't give him the credit he deserves as a phenomenal storytelling set piece and a reasonably fun fight. Number 5, Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. I think some of this one comes down to choice overload. When people are talking about the bosses of Elden Ring, there are just so many spammed bosses that it can be hard to really remember the details of every battle. That's why weirdos like me come in with entire spreadsheets documenting the fights and the deaths in my first playthrough. In any case, Rennala managed to stick with me from that first encounter to now. I can't say that I'm surprised you goobers overlook her so much because, well, FromSoft fans have a masochistic problem. They can only think a boss is good if it's within the acceptable range of difficulty. Since Rennala is not a hard fight at all, people think she is not a good fight. But similarly to Oceiros, Rennala thrives on atmosphere. We've done this weird puzzle boss thing before, where only one in a group of enemies can be damaged. I'm thinking Royal Rat Vanguard, Deacons of the Deep, Celestial Emissary, and now Phase 1 of Rennala. What Rennala does right though is set the stage with an ominous yet enchanting cutscene. There's something ethereal yet haunting about this library and this woman, and the singing children bring a distinct vibe in comparison to the previously listed puzzle bosses. The first phase sets the stage effectively for the real confrontation, which is a dazzling spectacle of moonlight, magic, and water. The graphical fidelity of Elden Ring shines here, bringing something more hypnotic than the typical FromSoft showstopper. And the fight is complete with massive dragon summons, huge laser beams, and moon transformations. And it does all of this without being a completely cheap pushover or overpowered and obnoxious. With the cutscenes, the depth, and the atmosphere, I can't say this boss gets the love it deserves. Sure, there are better fights in Elden Ring, but that doesn't make this fight any less awesome. Okay, who made this list? I'm gonna have to just copy and paste everything I put for Rennala now, asshole. Well, yeah, that guy's right. But where Rennala is still a decent straight-up boss battle, albeit with some magic, Divine Dragon is a different kind of experience entirely. It's almost almost like a cutscene, and I mean that in the most positive way possible. While you're interacting with the environment and the boss, it feels impossibly curated to create epic imagery and fantastical spectacle. It's got that wow factor that I feel is missing from some of Sekiro's bosses. And because it doesn't lean into the perfect rhythmic combat that the game has established, some people overlook this boss. I don't think I see people flaming this boss very often or anything, but I do see him near the bottom of most lists with a fair amount of negative critique. I, on the other hand, think this is a perfect break. Why did I start doing that accent? From the monotony of Sekiro's gameplay. While I love Sekiro and the combat is perfection, a lot of it can start to feel samey over time, until you get a few of the bosses that throw a wrench into the mix, like Divine Dragon, Guardian Ape, or Demon of Hatred. For all of this beautiful imagery, lovely music, fun cutscenes, I can't help but have the Divine Dragon here. Sometimes I think FromSoft fans forget that the point of the game is to have fun at the end of the day, and Divine Dragon delivers on that experience for me in spades. Now before we get to my top 3, be sure you guys like and subscribe. Seriously, 93% of you guys are not subscribed. This has got to be one of the worst ratios on all of YouTube. It honestly makes me sad, so please help me out. Number 3, Elden Beast. Oh boy, here's the big one. Honestly, I'd put Elden Beast as the most underrated boss based on how I personally feel about the fight. But let's take a step back for a second. When I first released my video ranking the bosses of Elden Ring, I didn't know what the common opinions were yet because, well, just about nobody had made big videos on it on YouTube. I gladly placed the bosses where I saw appropriate. Little did I know, my 500 subscriber channel, I'm not sure how many subscribers I had, but my small amount of subscriber channel was going to blow up after years of minor viewership. Little more did I know that my hottest take was going to be that I genuinely enjoyed Elden Beast. A lot. I didn't put Elden Beast in 1st or 2nd or even 5th. I put Elden Beast at 7th, and 300,000 views later, I'm a changed man. People were very happy about my enjoyment. They wanted me to be miserable like them, and they made that crystal clear. Every hate comment on stuff I get like that makes me just want to like Elden Beast more, so keep them coming. They are yummy in my tum-tum. I do see some of the complaints now that I've brought myself down from the hype of a finale of a new Souls game. Well, FromSoft game. He's only dropped 1 position to 8th, but I am sympathetic to the hatred of the ranged spam and inconsistent combat. While I'm sympathetic to it though, I disagree, as I've never had the fight last too long in my experience. The atmosphere, soundtrack, and arena are all impeccable, and I generally just enjoy the fights. This isn't something I can necessarily quantify with numbers, but if you typically enjoyed fights like Rennala filled with spectacle and dazzling magic, you'll probably enjoy this too. For those who don't, I get it. Kind of. But I think the insistence that it's one of the worst bosses in the series is blind hyperbolism for the sake of it. It's like when I said Malekith was my favorite boss in that video, I had a few comments from people saying Malekith was the worst of the entire game, just to be edgy. Bruh, have you faced Godskin Duo? Did you even spirit calling Snail? Number 2, Laurence, the first Vicar. My hottest take. Get it? Because he's on fire? I get it, okay? This is another one that I can see why you hate it. Yes, he has the capacity to absolutely one-shot you, and what I have to say to that is, get good. In all seriousness, this is one that I have a smaller sample size on. I've beaten Laurence a few times, and I've never died more than a few times to him in a go. I love his intro cutscene, I love his fiery design and screams, I love the retooled animations that make him distinct from Cleric Beast. I love the transformation to the second phase, and I love the soundtrack. All of it is perfect. His damage is kind of redonkaballs at times. And the delayed AoEs probably give people flashbacks to some of the more frustrating attacks of Elden Ring. But I just can't do it. I can't get behind the hate. Would I give Laurence a 10? No, he's probably like a 9 for me. But considering most people would give him like a 2 or a 3, that's a big discrepancy. To be fair, I haven't entered into late NG Plus cycles, so I haven't seen the worst of what Laurence has to offer. However, I think NG is the way the creators intended the game to be played, so I base most of my judgment of a boss and a game around that curated experience. And that experience, in my time playing Bloodborne, has been awesome every time I face him. It's one of the most exhilarating fights of the series, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Okay, maybe a little bit less damage, but almost no other way. And number 1, the most underrated boss of the series, very subjectively, in my opinion, is Dragonslayer Armour. Bit of a plot twist, huh? Yet nobody even remembers this guy. That's why I had to put him here, because nobody thinks about him. This is an easy 10 boss, in my opinion. From top to bottom, it's a classic FromSoft bout. But because it's Dark Souls 3, and Dark Souls 3 is filled to the brim with iconic bosses, a boss that uses armor very similar to Ornstein was easily forgotten. I don't understand that just because the armor's visual design is reminiscent of a beloved boss, he's overlooked. I guess there's a less distinct image associated with the boss, as thinking of Dragonslayer Armour makes you think of Ornstein. But think of the arena, the attacks, and the flow of this fight. This feels almost like an early stage of Sekiro to me, where it's like a perfect dance of timed defense and attack. It's got the scale, it's got the moves, and it's definitely overlooked. Again, this is an easy 10 in my opinion, and this is a boss that most people don't even think twice about, so just for me, why don't you give him an extra chance next time? And thanks guys so much for watching my video. Give me your underrated bosses down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Remember, we're at 93% unsubscribed. Help me out here. And have a great day. Thanks for watching. Peace.